Good morning, church. I know with the weird and strange and craziness that's going on in our world and in our community, I hope that you're able to just cast your anxieties upon the Lord, that you will be able to find His care for you. Know that we are still all about our mission to love God and to love one another and live out our faith every day. And what that looks like in this new kind of craziness, well, we're going to find out. We're going to see. But God is not surprised. He is certainly willing to meet us where we are. And your church and your elders and staff are going to be trying to figure out how we can move forward and be of benefit to each other as we try to figure out how to do those things again, to love God, love one another, and live out our faith every day. I did want to be faithful in being able to give you a little summary of the verses that we would otherwise have focused on this morning in Acts 8 verses 5 to 25. I'm not going to read it to you just because of the brevity of this video. I do encourage you to read it yourself. But I want to tell you, there's some strange things in there. It's about this Simon guy who apparently was a sorcerer, and he was baptized and became, at least in name, a Christian, but then there seem to be some different motives. And one of the things that I think we can really learn as we read this passage is to understand really about the heart of faith. Because the heart of something can be different than what captures our attention. I'm here in my den, and over here is a shelf that has a number of games in it. And one of the games we used to play with Luke was Don't Break the Ice. Perhaps you're familiar, and it has these little grids, and you knock out little pieces of these blocks, and eventually the whole thing will collapse, and you don't want to be the player when it collapses. Well, at one point, it became very clear to Luke as he was playing that his next move was going to make that happen, and so he just didn't want to play anymore. And we had this really interesting discussion as a father and a son, that it's fun to win games. It's great to have that, and it's great to pursue that. And yeah, it's just more fun to win. But if that's really the heart of the game, is the only purpose is to win, then you're not going to enjoy games. And if this is something you want to do, if you would like to play more games, then you're going to have to learn to enjoy even when you don't win. And he took it to heart. He was willing to finish that game, and we were able to start another. And I think about this in this passage as we see what things are really essential to our faith and what aren't. There's a lot of really crazy questions that come up about, well, wait, are they baptized but they received the Holy Spirit, but were they really Christian? There's a whole lot of those questions and kind of a strange passage. But I think the heart of this passage is really about the heart of faith, the spirit of faith. That we find that when it comes to really wanting to follow God, we have to be aware of some of the things that might distract us. They're not necessarily bad things, but they can certainly distract us if that becomes our focus. For example, just finding things that are amazing and shiny and exhilarating, when we want that worship experience that just really thrills us, and we want that really something we're excited and proud about. We want the big and shiny things. Well, the problem with folks who want big and shiny things is you're constantly on the search. You gotta move to the next thing. You gotta move on, and you gotta find the next and the bigger and the better. And that seems to certainly be what Simon was doing, but what he was called out for. We also find out that faith is not centrally about religious rituals. I mean, there can be real advantage in doing some of the things that we do, but the fact that they were baptized was not enough for them to really have, or for Simon specifically, to have a real connection to God himself. Now, certainly, we can think in terms of the religious ritual of baptism, but whatever rituals, we're not meeting as a church today, and it's a good thing when we do, and it's a great thing to worship, but it's the method to something that's much deeper. It isn't about the deeper, and while we always want to be faithful to gather, the truth is that isn't really the essence of faith. There is something else as well. One other thing that's important to know, because Simon gets called out for this in this passage, is that we can't really trade favors with God. Now, that may seem crazy. As you read this passage, you think, well, I would never offer money. I don't even know anybody would try to offer money for the Spirit of God or for these things, but I wonder if maybe we try to trade other things, specifically our own righteousness. That we think, well, if God, if I do all the right things and if I do all the good stuff and I perform all good and moral behaviors, then don't you kind of owe me? I mean, I've done my part, God. Now you need to do your part. And we begin to trade as if giving God our righteousness, giving God our obedience, that somehow indebts him to us and becomes a transactional thing, as opposed to I'm simply responding to God as God. I seek him for his own. I want to be with him. Now, I'm not saying anything of these are bad. It's not bad to have inspiring, amazing things happen. It's not bad to have religious ritual and to gather as a church. It's not even bad to be obedient and to offer things unto God. All those things we should do. The Bible tells us that those things can be good or necessary. But the issue is that they're not sufficient. That what we see in this passage is what's really sufficient is the coming of God himself. That we have the Spirit of God within us. Now, Acts 2 tells us that we receive the Spirit of God when we are his. So this passage about a separation that it appears, maybe that, and certainly in Simon's case, that they didn't initially receive God, but the thing that you need to know, and the most important work you and I can be about as a church, is to really figure out how we connect with God, to really do our best. So we have instituted this, or our president has, as a National Day of Prayer, but I think that's certainly worth us really praying today, to pray for the sick, to pray for those who are going to be isolated, to pray for our community. I am not going to guarantee you in the days to come that you're going to be fine. I'm not going to guarantee that this is all going to turn out okay. But what I can guarantee is that if you are doing everything you can, be connected to God and to do as he says, that you are going to be in the best position you can, not only for now, but for eternity. God bless. I'll be praying for you. Pray for me.